asked you to come on, I was going to devote this discussion entirely to your book for kids and your documentary, but we would be remiss if we didn't start by covering two major news items. And I know that you're frequently on CNN as a commentator, but let's pick, they're both disturbing and outrageous, but in different ways. Let's go first to the tragedy at the Islamic Center yesterday in San Diego, California. And, I went on quickly with CNN in prime time. They asked me to come on. And we've been through this drill before where we start categorizing. Is this a school shooting? Is this a hate crime? Was it about the mosque or the school? And it's looking more and more as law enforcement speaks directly to us that this is a hate crime, that appears to be the motivation, even perhaps coming from one of the suspect's moms. And then some sources saying to really credible reporters that, look, this was absolutely a white pride hate crime type thing. So here's my question. Are we convinced now that there is a direct line between rhetoric and acts of violence? And what should we be doing about it?
Yeah, I mean, look, are we convinced there's a line? Well, I guess it depends who's doing the shooting. And I say this like kind of sarcastically because we live in this moment where, and especially the right, they love to go crazy when there's violence or attempted violence against their side. That could include the president or anybody else. When it's the other side, there's no issue here, right? It's something else. It's transgenderism or whatever it is. Here's the reality of it. Like, yes, I mean, especially if you think about people in their 20s, right? 20s or younger, your prefrontal cortex is still developing. You don't fully grasp consequences. I mean, you don't fully understand what the rest of your life means, or in this case, what it means to take your life. And when you combine that with this toxic stew that exists of all the rhetoric of dehumanization, of making people seem less worthy of life that are different than you, I think it's been, quite honestly, it's surprising we don't have more of this.
Exactly.
Because, again, I mean, when you value life, only the life that looks like you, speaks like you, prays like you, then everybody else is an enemy. And we live in a society where enemies now deserve everything, including death. So yeah, I think it's very clear that rhetoric has an impact. I think it's very clear that we need, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, it shouldn't even matter, but we've got to just somehow as a nation, as like humans, to get back into this, like, people have value.
Yeah.
And I've got to say this, being from the old right, I will say the normal right, we used to talk about the value of human life. We would do that in the context of abortion.
Yeah.
They have dehumanized people so much. It's just incredible, Frank. And I think the only way out of this is not going to be to look to political leaders to do anything, because they just reflect, what people want. It's going to have to come from us, from our heart. And I think, quite honestly, the next generation, which I guess we can call it the next generation, but they're starting to take power, like the Gen Zers, I think they have done a much better job than our generation of rejecting hate on social media. They practice it, but in many cases they reject it too. So it's going to be on them to change it.
Yeah, I agree. Clearly, look, correct me if I'm wrong, but I have not yet heard the president issue a statement on the shooting yesterday. Am I missing something? Have you seen anything?
Nope, sure haven't.
I mean, and I think, I know enough to engage in some informed conjecture, which is, my guess is he's probably not liking what he's hearing from law enforcement right now.
That's right.
I think he's being briefed. And I think just going on public statements from the chief and from the FBI head there in San Diego, my guess is he's being told, hey, boss, this is not good for us.
Yeah. And by the way, Frank, think how quick they were to talk about the shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, to play the victim. And I want to be clear, I think that guy intended probably to go after the president. terrible person, all the caveats there.
Yeah.
But I think in reality, the president was not in imminent danger. There were
Right.
different floors, there's all that, but it doesn't excuse it.
No.
But they were very quick
Oh,
to
yeah.
jump on and say, we need to build a ballroom now.
Right.
So it's not that he has some lack of information or that he waits for all the facts.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
And,
know?
we're going to talk in just a little bit about your children's book called That's What Heroes Do, which I picked up for my grandkids. But, we saw a hero yesterday. We saw a security guard at the Islamic Center sacrifice his life for children's lives. And now the police are saying they're convinced that he got in the way. Or there would have been more death. And so we'll chat about that. A couple of other disturbing things about this shooting yesterday, other than I haven't heard a word from senior GOP leaders, is the age. You mentioned the age of the suspects, likely 17 and or 18. And my career in the FBI, Adam, was focused a lot on radicalization to violent jihad on the international terrorism side. So this makes perfect sense if you look at it through that lens of radicalization. But it's disturbing that now we're talking about a couple of American kids, one of them whom appears to have a Hispanic surname, and we're talking about it in the context of domestic terrorism violence. That's brutal. And the other disturbing thing, Adam, I've got to say is I'm now at the point where I don't know if we're going to get the true story out of our FBI. I just don't.
Look, this is what's crazy is, and you as a FBI guy, you understand the importance of, your word, right? The importance of when the FBI used to come out and say something, you would know that it's true as far as they know. Maybe they don't have all the facts, but they were going to get to the bottom of it. I mean, the fact that, and the Trumpers will go after people that are critical of what's going on in Iran, for instance. And, Iran puts out these amazing memes like the Lego memes and fight the information warfare very well. And this administration gets mad when people question why this war is happening or question whether or not they're telling the truth. But that's what happens when you lie all the time.
Yeah.
And so it creates a real crisis of confidence where we don't know if what the FBI is telling us is true or not. We don't know how to react from this because we don't know who to trust anymore. And that, I think, is creating this kind of soup of confusion that we live in, this like almost nihilism that we live in is because we just don't know who to trust. And unfortunately, the people that you should trust have proved themselves to be untrustworthy, the administration.
I actually think it's part of the desired objective, not only eroding our institutions and hollowing them out. And boy, is that becoming glaringly true for the CDC right now as we face a major Ebola outbreak in Africa. News this morning that there's an American who is at least exposed, if not positive, for Ebola in Africa. And we've hollowed out the CDC. We don't have a CDC director. We don't have a Surgeon General. We're missing 80 senior executive roles throughout HHS. 70 epidemiologists have been let go. Yeah, it's an absolute mess, and we don't know who to listen to or who to trust.
And by the way, why is the CDC so underfunded? Because of DOGE. How much money did DOGE actually save? Nothing. What did we do? We've destroyed our reputation on the world stage. We've turned our back on the most vulnerable so that we can build a ballroom and give Donald Trump more tax breaks. And I've got to tell you, this is coming from an old school conservative. The idea that we need to be giving more tax breaks to billionaires and millionaires, I mean, we could do a whole session on that at a time when we have a record debt and deficit, at a time where we really do need to spend money, whether it's modernizing our military or whether it's, again, helping folks and things like what's going on in Africa. It's not just about being nice to people in Africa, Frank. It's about protecting ourselves. And let me throw one more thing out there, which is on this shooting, these men are 18, 19, 17 years old, whatever they are. Can't we all agree at least on one thing, which is let's raise the age to purchase weapons nationwide to 21 years old. That's a very basic thing. When I was in Congress, we raised the national age to purchase cigarettes
Right.
to 21.
Right.
Cigarettes.
Yeah.
But yet we can't find agreement that
Yeah.
maybe you should be 21 years old to buy a long gun. I mean, in some states, Frank, you can buy an AR-15 before you can buy a pistol.
For sure.
Is that right?
I mean, that came up with the Uvalde school shooting in Texas and others. And look, I think there's wiggle room for the hunting families out there to say,
Sure.
okay, a shotgun, okay, fine. Grandpa's hunting rifle, fine. But yeah, if we're going to talk about semi-automatic and potentially fully automatic long guns, no.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I didn't mean to derail us into this, but I will say, like, when I was in and I was talking about, this kind of thing, people would be like, well, how do you define the difference between a long gun, a shotgun, and an AR? The difference is, a vertical grip versus horizontal. I'm like, listen, if we can't write in a law the difference between buying like an AR or a single shot, 12 gauge, you can't do mass shootings with 12 gauges. And I mean, these are just really basic things that we can do that unfortunately we're such in our corners that we don't.
No, it's and better than I, money controls,
Totally.
Gun money, NRA money controls decision making. And yeah, look, at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, the guy, thank God the guy had a shotgun because I don't know why, but buckshot doesn't really do a whole lot.
It's not the weapons you need to go into with that, but it worked out because he obviously ended up being a little less lethal than he could have been.
Exactly. Let's move on to the other big news item that's enraged so many folks, including myself, enough that I put pen to paper, and there's a column of mine out for Lincoln Square today called Slush Fund for Felons. And, look, $1.776 billion, deliberately 1776, to pay off what looks like will be Trump's allies or those who did things on his behalf. And let me just get your gut reaction to that fund being established.
I mean, first off, it's disgusting, clearly. I mean, obviously, the whole 1776, I'm kind of glad it's that amount of money because it makes it so clear that this is not a serious thing. Like, if this was a serious thing, the number would be like 1.5 billion, 1.6. There would be some mathematical thing, not just let's take the year the country was founded, add millions to it, and hand it out to whoever we want. Now, the thing about this, too, that is so egregious is it is, first off, your money, right? It's your money. And then Donald Trump is taking that money because they found a fund that basically has no cap on it, that the Congress doesn't have to appropriate. And then he has 5 people that'll sit on top of it, all of which he picks. He can fire them at any time for any reason, so that they've got to do exactly what he wants. And then they will award money. We will never know our money. We will never know who got that unless that person says their name out loud. And we will never know what was used to determine that. So we've just taken $2 billion and given them to whoever we want to. And all this is, Frank, this is a president that has pardoned everybody and now is going to reward them, that the main thing he's doing is sending a message. And that message is, if you're on my side, you don't have to worry about anything. And so there may be a time, dear MAGA voter, when I call on you to do things that may feel violent or outrageous. But look here, look how I took care of these people. And this is where it's going to be important for Democrats and, the non-existent sane Republicans, is to make it very clear that there will be a day when Donald Trump is no longer president. That's coming in 2.5 years. And we will not forget this. So enjoy your 2.5 years. Enjoy it. But you're going to pay the piper at some point. And I think that's essential.
It's accountability is essential. And Mike, as I went into with my column, look, this fund reminds me a lot of the La Cosa Nostra wiretaps I would listen to when I was in the FBI. This is a mob boss saying, hey, you took care of me, you made your bones, and I'll have your back. That's what this is. But it's more than just a thank you note to say the violent insurrectionists. Many of them, as you know, who pled guilty and or were convicted
Yeah.
So now we're going to just make that go away. We're going to pay them money, but it's also kind of a confession of sorts, but from Trump, meaning, yeah, I know these guys were violent on my behalf, and I'm taking care of them.
What happened to this? I thought this was Antifa. I thought it was the FBI that did this, right? Now all of a sudden, when there's money, we'll admit that it was us that did it.
Yeah.
I mean, and here's I wrote an article on my Substack like last week. By the way, you and I are like tied right now in Substack. So good job.
I didn't even know. That thing's a roller coaster.
I wrote an article that was basically like, okay, the hypocrisy is not. So if I say like, okay, well, you said it was the FBI and Antifa, and now you're saying blah, 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 and you call them out on that, and we should, but like that doesn't affect them because the hypocrisy is kind of the point. I saw Jim Jordan on one of the shows last week, and he said, he basically said Hunter Biden can't travel with Joe Biden, but the Trump kids can with Donald Trump. And the questioner is basically like, why? And he's like, because. And the point is, the more hypocritical you are on TV, like that's more of a tattoo of your allegiance to the cause. This is all tribal. And so January 6th clearly wasn't the FBI. They don't care. They'll say whatever they want at any moment.
Well, if the FBI stays January 6th, I want my check.
No kidding.
Where is my check? And
dude, I was in my office with my gun out, barricaded. I think I should get a reward.
You are, right? Truly, you have standing. And the more disgraceful notion is not only people who've been convicted or pled guilty to these crimes are going to get a check, but these people are recidivists. There's people out there who went and molested children, been arrested for child porn. One was shot dead by a sheriff's deputy on a car stop. These are thugs. And when asked the question, Trump was asked yesterday, "You going to give money to these thugs?" I don't know. I don't know anything about this. In fact, let's play a clip of Todd Blanche being asked about this fund yesterday.
Simple question: Will individuals who assaulted Capitol Hill police officers be eligible for this fund?
Well, as it makes plain, anybody is
just let me know if they're eligible for the fund.
As was made plain yesterday, anybody in this country is eligible to apply if they believe they're a victim of weaponization.
Mr. Attorney General, let me ask you this. Are there going to be rules that say that if you've assaulted a Capitol Hill police officer or committed a violent crime, you will not be eligible? Why not make that a rule?
I expect that, because I'm not one of the commissioners setting up the rules, I expect that there will be rules.
You're appointing 4 of the 5 members, aren't you, Mr. Attorney General?
Pardon me?
You're appointing 4 of the 5 members.
I am appointing all 5 members.
You can certainly set up the rules. I would hope you would make a rule that anyone convicted of assaulting a police officer or a violent crime is simply not eligible. They should not apply.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. The runaround.
I'll tell you what, 2 things. First off, Van Hollen, it's Capitol Police, not Capitol Hill Police. Slight annoyance, but it's okay.
Yes, that's
okay,
true.
Van Hollen. But I mean, look, here's the other thing to keep in mind in all that. And they need to keep pinning down everybody that's even, 2 or 3 degrees separated from this fund in these questions, because this is about communicating to the American people where the administration's head is at. If they won't say, the guy that beat up and took Mike Fanone within an inch of his life, if they won't say that he's not eligible, the American people need to know this. The other crazy thing here, Todd Blanche, until like 8 minutes ago, was Donald Trump's personal lawyer. Okay. Mm-hmm. Todd Blanche was the guy that was suing the government. By the way, what was the initial suit about? Because Donald Trump's tax returns were released against his wishes, which up to that point, every president or candidate has released their tax returns. Trump promised he would. Okay, his returns were forcefully released. Fine. Victimization, got it. $10 billion. And then they settle now with the new attorney general, who was his defense lawyer, who initiated these suits for a $1.7 billion fund, of which, by the way, Donald Trump himself would not rule out the fact that he and his family would also be eligible for this. Yeah. Here's the thing. So my wife is Salvadorian, and she would always talk about how, presidents of El Salvador were corrupt they would leave office and you'd find out they stole $300 million from the government, but now they live in Honduras or whatever. She's like, the difference here is they would at least be secretive about it. Here, this is just out in the open.
Yeah.
And I think it's the brilliance behind what Trump is doing, because he's so blatant about it that it feels like it can't be illegal, because why would he be so blatant about it? But he just is.
We're being robbed in plain sight, and it's become numb. We're numb to the whole thing. But I really wish the next journalist that gets in front of Trump would say, would go farther than Van Hollen, which would be to say, how about child rapists? How about we've got Jan Sixers who've been involved in crimes against children, sir. You good with that? Giving them a big fat check? And of course, let him say, I don't know anything about it. That's up to the committee, and I don't know who they are. Yeah,
let me look into it.
Yeah.
There was one of these guys, and he was asked about it. One of these guys that just got recaught for child rape, 3 or 4 kids, was on record, or part of the trial was he was offering these kids hush money from his coming settlement.
Yes.
Being a January 6th defendant. So he was using that to try to silence these victims.
I think that did come up yesterday, and Blanche pretended he knew nothing about that.
They don't know anything, Frank. I'm going to give you 2 quick political secrets, and you can give me some FBI secrets sometime. Here's how you know a politician is punting. I'll have to look into that. We should have a deep conversation, or I don't know about that, but I'll get back to you. Every one of them know exactly what you're talking about.
Right. I'll be happy to look into that. Yeah. That's right.
Let me get back to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's something we should handle in chambers or something.
That's
like
right.
That. Yeah. Yeah, we got that. We've got that. Look, you people know your name more than the average Congress member, because you stood up at a time when it was required to do so. And of course, our viewers know what I'm talking about, and that's the investigation into January 6th. And you coming out of that, I'm sure you've been called a hero more times than you're comfortable with. That phrase makes a lot of people uncomfortable, but you've got a children's book out called, and let me show folks what it looks like, and we'll also put it up on the screen, but it's called That's What Heroes Do. Yeah, that's a better shot. I got it for my grandkids.
That's awesome.
And we'll be doing that. Some are able to read on their own, some are going to have it read to them. But here's what kind of is the grabber for me with the book, is just the reminder that heroes are not extraordinary people all the time, but rather they're people who do extraordinary things.
That's right.
What put it in your head to even do a children's book?
Well, it's a good question. And I would also say to people, even if you don't have kids, it's a good book to have around, and you'll understand it if you get it. Like, yes, I have been called a hero, and I always eschew that, because I don't think that describes me. Because I literally did my job. I would say to people, like, it looks like heroism, but in reality, I'm just surrounded by cowards. And so, when you compare cowards with somebody that's doing,
relatively speaking, you look really great.
That's right. It looks heroic. But I wrote I used to say I wrote my adult book, and then I realized how that came across. I wrote my grown-up book right when I got out of Congress. I don't have an adult book, and but I did my grown-up book, and then I was talking with my wife and stuff, and it just, like, my agent had actually suggested you should write a children's book, and I'm like, yeah, no way, like, me. And I started thinking about it, and it's like, well, what could I? And I had realized that, like, one of the things that we're bereft of in this country, especially for young people, I don't even know if I use that term correctly, but, like, they have their superheroes on TV, right? I'm sure they know about military members and how what military members can do are heroic, but I think kids need a reminder, an inspiration, the reality that heroism is not about flying in a cape. It's not about, I do have an example of somebody that died for their country, a friend of mine named Andreas O'Keefe. I wear his name on my wrist. But it can be people that just do everyday things to help people. There's a very brief discussion in the book or mention of helping kids learn to fly. And I love this story. There was a black business owner I knew when I was in Congress, and he was a supporter of mine. And he actually started an organization called Tuskegee Next. And what does Tuskegee Next do? Well, it goes into inner city, the tough areas of Chicago, and teaches young, predominantly black kids to fly airplanes. So one of the things he told me, he goes, unfortunately in my community, he said, a lot of kids, they think they either have to be musicians or sports players. And he goes, I go in and tell them, like, flying a plane, we can teach you to fly an airplane, and you can go get a job at a big airline. And a lot of them are shocked. Well, to date, he has taken 60 kids out of a rough area with no hope, taught them to fly airplanes. They now are employed by United Airlines. And by the way, an airline pilot, when you're starting out 200 grand, you'll end up at 500 grand. I mean, this is an incredible thing. And it was just a guy that thought about, like, I'm very successful. How do I pass on that success? Had a passion for aviation. And it's like little things like that anybody can do. You don't have to start Tuskegee Next, but are you going to help your friend at school? Maybe you do something for mom and dad that doesn't feel right, in terms of, like, it's not necessarily what you want to do, but it's helpful for them. It's those little steps and little things that we can do every day that makes you heroic. Yeah. And by the way, if you remember when the Trump administration took over and they were going after DEI in, the airlines, one of the programs they were talking about was Tuskegee Next. And I just want to be very clear about something. You cannot, because of your race or gender, you cannot go into an airline with lower qualifications. You have to be able to fly planes. And if you can fly planes, we don't care what you look like.
Really?
You can fly the planes.
Yeah. There's a takeaway from the book as it nears its end is basically, again, correct me, the language I'm sure I'm going to get wrong, but basically the hero ends up being, a hero is described basically as someone who cares about other people and tries to help other people.
That's right. That's right.
That's, I think, is going to get through to a lot of kids who have that superhero cape mentality when they think of the word hero. How did you, just out of curiosity, how do you even match up with an artist? How did you find your illustrator for this?
Isn't the illustrations awesome? Aren't they?
Yeah,
awesome?
they're vibrant.
Yeah.
And I think kids are going to love
And it's interesting because the dad and the son is named Christian. That's my son's name. And obviously it's based on us. And I even my son who's 4, he can look at it and be like, oh yeah, that's Adam. That's dad, And we just, look, I have an agency. I'm represented by UTA. And so we were talking about doing the children's book. And so we got hooked up with Thomas Nelson, the imprint. Yep. And then they basically go out and kind of interview a few illustrators. And that's what we did. And I couldn't have picked better because they were just, this was the best. I mean, it really turned out amazing.
It grabs, if it's on a bookshelf, you kind of gravitate toward it. And then for those listening that are interested, is there a recommended age group for this book?
According to the official, it's 4 to 8, but I think 2 to 100 years old, I think it's enjoyable, but definitely 4 to 8 fits in perfectly.
Gotcha. Yeah, the 8-year-old's the 5, 6, 8, and 8-year-olds are probably reading. 7-year-olds are reading it themselves, which is great. Yeah. Okay, let's go on though. So since now it's the Frank Figliuzzi book and movie review show, let's move on to the documentary, which I also have seen. It's called The Last Republican, another title that grabs. First of all, by the way, I do recommend, I enjoyed it. It is not, a lot of people, when they hear documentary, they start snoring. And this is not, one of the things I loved about this is, there's no dull moments in this, but tell me the background on this, because we get it almost real time. Following January 6th. How did this even come to be?
Listen, and you can find it now. The good thing is it's now on my YouTube, so it's free. You used to have to pay $5-6 for it. So if you go to my YouTube, just Adam Kinzinger, you can find it. I think we have it pinned. Look, and you guys may have a trailer of it, but I let me just say this. So I had like 1,000 people that wanted to do a documentary after I voted to impeach Trump. And they all wanted to do the same thing, which is, can you run again and win when you took on Donald Trump? And I had no interest in that because I really have no interest in the political horse race. But these guys came along. One of them is a major investor in South Park. He's actually one of their big lawyers. The other guy was a director of Hot Tub Time Machine, which is one of the funniest movies ever. Okay. And so they came and kind of pitched to me that they had an interest not in the horse race of a reelection, but the human impact. And I didn't want to do it, but my wife and I talked about it, and we're like, how do we ever explain to Christian, our kid who was being born, what this time was like? So we agreed. And what you end up seeing in this final product is, yes, a little bit of the story of January 6th, and you get a blatant reminder of what happened that day. One of the things I hear from people all the time is, I just forgot how violent that day was. And you see that, it's the only cinematic visuals you have on the floor of the hearings. So it was the only not basically C-SPAN camera on the hearings. So you get that in-depth, that real depth. And but there's two other stories that I think are important. One is, what is the human impact of doing the right thing, right? Yeah. What is the cost? And I'm going to tell you, it's hard. And it's something I'm still working through, like psychologically, what were the impacts on me and my family? And they were significant. But the other thing is, the director is a very hardcore lefty. I'm a centrist, but I'll play the righty for this documentary. And you see that there are two people that can be great friends, respect each other, and I think it is a great human story in that. And by the way, guys, listen, the documentary is actually funny. I don't know how they did it, but it is a funny documentary.
Yeah. There's a quirkiness to it that's very enjoyable, and it moves quickly, and there's a lot of action, folks. So yeah, check it out on Adam's YouTube. I think I am one of those people who paid for it, maybe Amazon or someplace. I can't remember.
I didn't get the money, but thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Welcome to that club. So look, you made a slight reference to this, so I'd be remiss in not asking. You got a book out, or books plural. You've got a documentary out. Lots of people do view you as a hero, who can speak to both sides of the aisle. And why you probably get asked a lot, are you going to serve the public back in an elected office again? I'm going to ask it slightly differently. Why would we not see you in some future elected role?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's funny, when I got out of Congress, I was like, man, there's no way I want to run again. And that has changed because, like, you have a passion for public service. It's like that fire will never go out. And actually, that fire for me has gotten more intense. The question of why would I not is only because, where do I fit? I mean, I'm a Democrat now, basically. I vote Democratic. I have moderated on some views. It's the benefit of being able to come out of the system and just kind of reanalyze, what do I really believe? I'm 48 years old now. Yes, I came up as a conservative. Where was I wrong? And I think a lot of the areas I recognize I was wrong was like things like income disparity, that kind of stuff, spending, some of the social issues. But I ask myself all the time, certainly I'm never going to run as a Republican, right? Yeah. That party has burned itself to the ground. Yeah. Can I run as a Democrat? And that's a question that I have that's open in my mind. Do I get through a primary? Because the one thing I don't want to do is run and be somebody I'm not. Yeah. Because Americans are sick of this. I'm sick of it. Yeah. So I'm not going to go run in a Democratic primary and pretend to be a hardcore lefty if I'm not. Yeah. Can I run as a centrist and win? And that's a question I grapple with. So to be honest with you, Frank, I would love to. I would love to announce I'm running for president tomorrow. Right. But I also don't want to run for no reason. And so I wrestle with that. Yeah. I think there is a significant amount of Americans right now, a significant number of Americans that feel politically homeless, that I think I would represent. The question is, in what capacity and how?
Right. Look, you've raised a legit question, and it's really on my mind increasingly. And people know I'm no political strategist. I'm the antithesis of that. But I continue to say the fringes are controlling the narrative.
That's right, they are.
And having spent 8 years on in corporate media, yeah, I think ratings and tension and fear get people in front of a screen. And,
Yeah.
you know, if we had a network that was really in the middle, you know, they would appeal to the majority of Americans who also, like you, feel like they're displaced.
I would call it like almost radical centrism. Like, because I think part of the issue is, I mean, look, there's some areas I'm liberal on, some areas I'm conservative on. So I'm not a centrist on every issue. And I think in the past, we've kind of thought of moderates as like, because they have been kind of this squishy, like, I'm not going to take a side, you know, like Susan Collins in Maine, right? And everybody hates those people. What I think we actually need is people that are as passionate as Graham Plattner or whoever, right? That can go out and speak to people, but from a kind of a centrist perspective. So can light the fire, but not like I'm a moderate because I'm weak. No,
Right.
I'm a moderate because F you, right? Like that kind of thing. I think we need that.
Yeah, and again, not pretending to be a politics strategist, but you know, the question that the Democratic Party has to ask itself is: are we truly a big enough tent
That's right.
to welcome the centrists? And you know, we saw Liz Cheney out on the road with Kamala Harris. You know, did you ever think you'd see that happen?
No.
It happened.
Well, and what worries me, and granted, it's all internet comments, so you take that for, you know, a grain of salt, but you see some on the left that are like, well, it's because she went with Liz Cheney that we lost, you know, because like, no, you can actually see a significant number of Republicans voted for her, but it wasn't enough, right?
Yeah.
There's just, and for Democrats, it's like, look, have your fights on the issues in the tent.
Yeah.
Like, actually, when you disagree with each other and you can have respectful disagreements, it's fun. That's why I got into politics. I
Yes.
enjoyed that.
Yes.
It is much better to battle inside the tent on your differences of opinion than be out of power.
True.
Sitting where we are right now, watching our Constitution be ripped out from under us, but at least we're pure. If the Democratic Party, and they're much better at this than the Republican Party, but if the Democratic Party can truly be a big tent party, we can win. You and I don't live that far from each other.
Yeah.
We can win Texas,
Yeah.
right? That's a possibility, and never lose an election again. But that's
True.
the question.
That's
Are we
true.
able to do that?
That's true.
Mhm.
Let's spend. We've only got like 3 minutes left. Let's spend a small portion of that with a clip from the documentary, so people get exposed to it, get a feel for it, and maybe check it out on your YouTube. Sean?
Do you have contempt for my views, Steve?
So let me ask you, how does one even
Don't think we
become
can hear
a
it.
Republican? Because like, I don't know, I don't get it.
You know, my parents were Republicans. Ronald Reagan was president. You probably hated Reagan.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Can you hear that?
Yes.
Ronald
Oh,
Reagan,
okay.
bro.
What's so great about Ronald Reagan?
Now you can feel free to cry if you want. I mean, just get it all out.
It's not about a political view. It's about what it is to turn against everything you've ever belonged to because of some red line you can't cross.
Yeah, I mean that does encapsulate a lot of the feel of it. I want to just spend the remaining 2 minutes on something that I'm asking a lot of my guests, Adam, which is I know you're a person of faith, and I want to get your thoughts on what's happened to the church, Christianity, Christian nationalism. We're fighting with the Pope, for God's sakes. What do you see happening in churches, and what is that legacy going to look like for Trump?
I think Trump will be, I think for Trump, I'll answer that with saying, I think in 10 years, there's not going to be a single person ever admit that they supported him. So I think that's going to happen. The church, I mean, look, let's be, and we don't have to stop right at 45 minutes because this may take me a bit to get through. Like, one of the things I I've struggled with in my post-Congress career is like, what is faith? What is my faith? Actually, and I hate to use the term deconstruct because it's kind of overused, but I have had to go through and deconstruct what do I really believe. And it's actually made my faith in Jesus Christ stronger than it ever has been, because it forced me to look and say, who is he really? Right? Instead of being fed by the evangelical church, what did Christ really say? And I start to see in his words, caring for the homeless, punching up, not punching down. I don't think Jesus has much of an opinion on our tax rates here. And what I have seen, there was always a discussion in the evangelical church where I grew up, like always this obsession with the end times and the rapture and stuff. And it was always like there will be a remnant of Christianity left that is being oppressed and attacked. And I think that might be true, but it's not the same people that they thought. I think there is a remnant of people that truly understand who Jesus is and truly understand Christianity, but it's not the majority of the church. Are there good churches out there? Sure. People like Russell Moore, like David French, right? There are good pastors out there that understand who Jesus was. The Pope, I would argue, is probably one of the best popes. But there are a lot of people that have been blatantly misled. And I think God is going to judge harshly those that have a flock that deliberately mislead them for political reasons. Because if you actually look at the words of Jesus, the main thing he would talk about is like, I'm not a political movement, right? I didn't come to lead a revolution, because he could have. He's like, I came to be a revolution in people's hearts. And that to me has changed how I have seen Christianity. Yeah. And unfortunately, I think there's a lot of people that think they're on the right side of him and are not right now.
Yeah, well said. And I think when we do talk about accountability writ large for this regime, there may be some accountability that has to happen in the pulpit for people claiming they know who you should vote for. Because
That's right. Jesus did not endorse candidates.
Yeah.
So don't listen when people say this is the Jesus endorsed candidate.
Yes. I'm Jesus and I approve this message. Hey, listen, thanks for spending your time with us, Adam. Keep up the good work. And folks, check out That's What Heroes Do and the documentary, The Last Republican. Adam, we'll talk to you soon.
Let's do this again soon. I appreciate it.
Sounds good. Stay well. Take care.
You bet. Take care.
All right, folks, that was former Congressman Adam Kinzinger, formerly of Illinois. And look, I don't know, did we get a little bit of news that he's open to serving the public as an elected official again, maybe at the highest level? Hey, I'll have to look back at that clip and see what we do with that. But, a lot of good topics here. Centrism. Yeah, there you go. The crazy slush fund for felons. Check out my column on that today. And hey, we've already got a great guest scheduled for next week. You're going to love her. Yeah, why don't I go ahead and tell you who it is? It'll be Barb McQuaid. You know her, you love her from MS Now, and a great legal mind as well. And we'll be talking with her next week. I'll see you then. Until next time, stay safe.